Good morning, Muskegon. This is Eye on Muskegon, and I'm Jim Riley, your host for this community conversation. And once again, we are here in Muskegon's Clear Channel Studios with my friend and engineer, that legendary, the double O, Oscar Osbo. And back again, helping us out, businessman, author, man about town, Mike Hewitt. Good morning, Mike. Good morning, Oscar.
Good morning.
Good morning, Jim. Jim, I got to tell you before you get going, it's kind of exciting for me. You've been a guest on my show a number of times, but I've not yet, until this morning, been a guest on your show.
No,
Yeah, you were.
Once
Just a couple
before.
weeks ago, you were a guest on my show.
You were on mine. I wasn't on yours.
Well, that's why we have eyeonmuskegon.com, folks. That's where we can find that proof of whether we have been on each other's shows. But it's great to have you back, or in your case, given that there's been clearly a little stroke involved for your first time. But nonetheless, we are...
Yeah, because he has been, because he was on your show, and then he stayed here and did his show with you.
Yes, but that's okay.
Okay.
That's all right. Maybe you viewed yourself as a guest, and in fact, now you're a co-host.
Wait, you know what? You're right. I think Oscar, he is right, because he was... Yep, you're absolutely right.
Of course he's
Jim,
right. But that's the way we wanted it to be. Okay, hey, look.
I'm going to mark that down as your time to be correct today.
I'm gonna figure out a way to splice that little piece of wisdom, and we'll play that at every show in the future. Hey, you've always got Mike great quotes at the beginning of your show, and I'll give one that I have given before, but I do think it's so important because so many folks are just not getting it. One of the greatest leaders, greatest statesmen of our time, Winston Churchill said, quote, "Socialism is a philosophy of failure, the creed of ignorance, and the gospel of envy. Its inherent value is the equal sharing of misery." And he said that in the last century. I think that people today just do not believe things will get too bad. And matter of fact, if you go to Europe, if you read much about Europe, you will find that there are millions and millions and millions of people who, on one hand, are unemployed. What Italy's unemployment rate is, Italy and Spain in the mid-20s, 25% unemployment, folks. That's higher than it was in this country during the Depression. And yet, they continue to re-elect their same leaders. They, for some reason... They do not buy what Winston Churchill said. They somehow think that there is a money tree out there that they can squeeze those evil wealthy. And unfortunately, as we here in Muskegon have found, as we look around at the empty buildings and we look in our state, in the Flints and the Benton Harbors and the Detroits and the Sagginaws and others, that at some point you do run out of other people's money. And then the result of that is pretty awful. You have schools closing, and you have jobs, of course, disappearing. And anyway, on that happy note, we're going to try to, what we're going to try to do here is bring to you what's been going on, what's maybe coming down the pike, what's happened in the past, to get you involved so that you will pick up the phone and you will contact your elected officials. Maybe you'll make a phone call. Maybe you'll visit their office. Maybe you'll invite a friend instead of getting together for that weekly card game. Maybe you'll get 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 friends and maybe go to a city council meeting, go to a county meeting, a planning commission meeting, a school board meeting. So that's our ultimate goal here, is to get citizens involved in affecting some kind of change that's real, rather than just sitting around like we do at Carmen's Cafe every Thursday morning, and I do with other folks. By the way, Carmen's at Tuesdays and Thursdays at 2 o'clock, and just complaining. Complaining will not get you to where you want to go unless you complain to the right people. And complaining to me won't do it.
They should give you at least a free hamburger, I would think, as much as you talk about Carmen's. But,
yeah,
that's just my view.
I'm all for that. But that's another issue.
And since I'm kind of co-hosting, I want my free hamburger also.
Yeah, right.
Well, how about instead of a free hamburger, let me just say how wonderfully we were treated when Honey Bunch and I went to your store, Renegade River in Spring Lake, and purchased a great little Ruger 380. We got good education and great service, and I would strongly recommend, in particular these days, as your business is really under siege from the forces of evil, those folks who do want to make sure that only the lawbreakers have guns, that go visit Renegade River. You do have guns there, which is great, and if you want to buy guns and ammo, you got it.
You betcha. I got to tell you, it's kind of funny, too.
What would you rather have, that or a hamburger?
I'm sticking with the guns and the ammo so I can defend
Well,
my hamburger.
ad, that little free ad we gave you. There we go.
I appreciated that. Hey, before you move away from Winston Churchill, though, I got to share a real brief, short story with you. Someone sent me a typical picture on Facebook here the other day, and I'm originally from Pontiac, Michigan. My brother-in-law was a police officer in Pontiac, and so all my family is from that general area, at least for the last century. And the picture I got sent was downtown Pontiac somewhere in the middle of the 1930s. And the irony to the picture is that it's an overview. It's probably taken out the second or third story of one of the buildings, and it looks down Saginaw Street, which is the main street in downtown Pontiac. And remember, when we're talking about the middle of the Depression, and everyone's walking around, and there's a lady walking her dog across the street, and you can see that there's hustle and bustle. Downtown Pontiac is alive. And then I Google downtown Pontiac and look at a recent picture from Google. And the middle of the Depression of the 1930s looked hustle, bustle, ready to go, activity, growth. And now it looks like one of those sci-fis after the nuclear bomb went off. It's devastation. It's dead. And in fact, back then they had a 300-person police department, and now they've had to give up their police department and a lot of other services. So it sounds like Winston Churchill was right on the button.
Is the Silverdome even active anymore?
It sits there. You want to buy it?
Yeah. Actually, the roof just collapsed. And it's funny.
That's right.
A friend of mine, a very good friend of mine, was the chief engineer in building the Silverdome. And actually, it was the only public stadium that ever came in under budget and on time. Yeah. But one thing, Mike, I think you missed. During the Depression, there were millions and billions and trillions, depending on how you would measure it, of government money keeping Pontiac alive. And we know that because the president's just said it, that every penny that's being spent, certainly today and recently, has been wisely spent. And so Pontiac must not be getting any federal money, must not have been getting any federal money, as opposed to it was getting tons of it back in the 30s, right? Or it couldn't possibly be in the mess it's in. It just needs more money, right?
It kind of reminds me when you take us down that path of the successful city that was Detroit. When up until about 1960, the city had the highest per capita income in the United States.
66. I lived in the suburbs of Detroit. I lived in Birmingham, right next to Pontiac. And in 1966, you could get on a bus in Birmingham or Pontiac, because they went all the way out right down Woodward. And if you were 12 years old, you could go with your 12-year-old friend, and you could hop on that bus, and you could go right down to Grand Circus Park, right in the center of Detroit City. And that was a safe city. It was a thriving, bustling city. And it was the summer of '67 when the Doors had "Light My Fire," and when there was who knows what the justification was, but there were riots by people in Detroit, and that city died that summer. But 1966, it was thriving, bustling, a tremendous city.
I remember that time too. I was sitting with my dad on the front porch, listening to his radio when the riots were going on, and actually I come from Mount Clement, so we're all from the east side here. So there you go.
I got to tell you that I don't know that I agree with you, Jim, because the city of Detroit had riots in the 19-teens. It had riots again in 1943. In fact, in the 43 riots, they had to bring in the Texas National Guard to keep peace because FDR did not want to draw tension or the
That's
national.
interesting.
Yeah, they didn't want to draw national attention away from the war effort. So what they did is they brought in the Texas National Guard. Don't tell the media, to keep the city squelched from not burning, and that allowed America's war effort and its eyes to stay on the ball, if you will. But my point in bringing it up is that it lived through all that. What it did not live through was Johnson's war on poverty.
Oh, it was the extra money.
When Johnson came up with, I can't remember the name of it, was a Premier City, or it was some focus on bringing urban America back to life, keeping in mind here that Detroit was alive at the time. It was the highest per capita in America. So he creates this colossal federal program that's designed to